When I returned for the funeral, my father shouted, "You came to shame my house with that bastard." I took a deep breath, my bones trembling with the quiet fury I'd carried for decades, and replied, "He's not some deadbeat son, Dad. He's your grandson. I kept this secret for 20 years until I could destroy the one who destroyed my childhood. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my dears. What a blessing to be here talking with you today. My name is Gertrude Oliver Sanders. I'm 72 years young, and I live here in peaceful Hartsville, Tennessee, a small town but with a big heart, where everyone knows everyone and there's always someone watching the street from their front porch. This is where I built my life after so many twists and turns that fate threw my way, but don't let the peace fool you. Some stories are born in fire, and mine was forged in the deepest, darkest pit a soul can know. These days my life is pretty peaceful, you know. I wake up early with the first rooster crow, make my coffee nice and strong, and sit on my porch to watch the day break. I like taking care of my plants. I have a backyard full of medicinal herbs that I learned to grow from my Aunt Darlene God. Rest her soul. Lavender to calm, mint for the stomach, rosemary for memory. Each little plant has its purpose, just like each of us in this life. My son Matthew, who's 61 now, lives in Nashville with his family, but he comes to visit every month with my 2 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. Those are the days when my house fills with noise, laughter, and life. Little Helen, my youngest great-granddaughter, always asks me to tell stories from my life, and I do the ones I can tell to such innocent ears. But you, my dears, watching me now, are more mature listeners, and perhaps you can understand a story I've kept locked away for a lifetime. A story about pain, secrets, and ultimately liberation. Because life sometimes gives us burdens too heavy to carry alone, burdens that can crush you. Unless you find the strength to crush them first. Before I start my story, I'd like to ask a little favor. If this video touches your heart, if you feel my words might help someone, hit that like button and subscribe to Grandparents' Tales. It's like a virtual hug you give me, and I feel every single one of them. You hear and tell me here in the comments, what little town are you watching me from? And what time of day did you find this video? In the morning with your coffee, after lunch, or in the evening with a hot cup of tea? I always read all the comments, and I'm so happy to know where you're from and when you take time out of your day to listen to this grandma's stories. Tell me, will you? Let's create a chain of kindness. Now, I'm going to start telling a story that few people in my life know. A story about a girl who had her innocence stolen, who carried a painful, poisonous secret for many years. It's about how that girl, who was once me, faced the worst kind of betrayal, and still found the strength not just to survive, but to wait, to plan, and in the end to free herself through the terrible, glorious truth. I was born in Crossville, on the Tennessee-Kentucky border, in 1953. It was a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business, and where secrets stayed hidden behind fake smiles and fence-line gossip. Our house was away from downtown, a simple wooden construction with a big front yard, a chicken coop out back, and a vegetable garden my mom tended with all her heart. But that house, my dears, was not a home. It was a beautifully painted cage. My father, Ernest Oliver, was a respected man in the region. He owned a small general store that sold everything from kerosene and tools to fabric and candy. He was a man of few words, always with a stern face, who ruled the house with a fist of iron. When he came home from work, we had to be quiet. Even our dog, Betty, knew it was time to hide under the porch. Not that he was mean all the time, no. Sometimes on Sundays after church, he'd bring home candy or buy us popsicles. But all it took was someone doing something he didn't like for all hell to break loose. And his hell was a silent, seething kind. The kind that made the air too thick to breathe. My mama, Dorothy, was the opposite. A petite woman with a soft voice and hands always busy. She spent her days between the kitchen, the garden, and housework. She had a special way of making sweet potato pie with cinnamon that was known throughout the neighborhood. When the smell of that pie filled the house, we knew it was a holiday or important company was coming. My mama didn't talk much, especially in front of my father, but her eyes told stories her mouth didn't dare. She had a sad look, like someone carrying a heavy weight on her heart, a weight I would only understand much later. There were 3 of us kids, me, the middle child, my older brother, Joshua, who is 4 years older than me, and Celine, my baby sister, 3 years younger. Joshua helped my father at the store from early on. He woke up before sunrise and only came back when it was getting dark. Celine was the joy of the house with her braids and easy laughter, always inventing games. I tried to protect that laughter, that lightness in her, because even then, I sensed the shadows gathering at the edges of our world. Our house was simple but well kept. In the living room, a wicker sofa that my mama covered with a colorful quilt. A small table with a radio that only got turned on for special occasions. And on the wall, a picture of Jesus in a carved wooden frame. The kitchen had a wood stove that stayed lit all day in winter, a wooden cabinet where we kept the dishes, and a big table where we ate our meals. My father sat at the head. We didn't start eating until he said grace, and nobody got up before. He finished. I shared a room with Celine, 2 little beds with straw mattresses, a wooden trunk for our few clothes, and on the wall, prayer cards we got from Sunday school. Joshua slept in a small room in the back, near the storage where we kept tools and bags of supplies that my childhood was one of work and responsibilities. From age 6, I helped my mama take care of Celine, fetch water from the well, feed the chickens. At school, I only went half a day. I studied at Crossville Elementary, a 2-story building on the town square with a bell that rang at 7 a.m. sharp. I liked studying, especially when Mrs. Patterson told stories about faraway places, but it was a luxury that didn't last long. At 10 years old, my father decided I had too much schooling for a girl and took me out to help more at home. That was the first dream he took from me. The games were simple but full of magic. With the other neighborhood girls, Teresa from the butcher shop, Irene from the corner store, and the twins, Olivia and Opal, we'd play Ring Around the Rosie in the yard, make rag dolls with scraps my mama gave us, or venture to the creek that ran behind the houses where we'd catch minnows with nets and sticks. The boys had other games, tops, marbles, flying kites, and we rarely mixed. Girls who play with boys turn into hussies, said my grandma Ethel, my father's mother, who lived 2 houses down from ours. And that's how it was. Until I was 11, when everything changed forever. The change started subtle, like a small cloud on a sunny day that gradually grows until it becomes a storm. My uncle Christopher, my father's older brother, had returned to Crossville after years working in Memphis. He was different from other men in the region. Wore city clothes, spoke well, had money in his pocket, and stories that made everyone laugh at the store's conversation circles. He brought presents for all of us. A new hat for my father, a silk scarf for my mama, a slingshot for Joshua, and a porcelain doll for Celine. For me, he brought a blue satin hair ribbon. The prettiest niece deserves a special gift, he said while tying the ribbon in my hair. I remember his look at that moment, a look that made my stomach freeze, even without understanding why. It was the look a wolf gives a lamb before the chase begins. Uncle Christopher soon became my father's business partner. They expanded the business, bought more merchandise, started supplying the surrounding farms. My father seemed happier than ever before, laughed more, brought more gifts home, even let us turn on the radio on Sunday afternoons, but something strange was happening. Uncle Christopher started showing up at the house at different times. Always when my father and Joshua were at the store. He'd bring hidden candy for me, ask me to show him the backyard, the garden, the chicken coop places away from the house's view. Asterisk, asterisk, my mama seemed suspicious, but never said anything. Maybe out of fear of my father, maybe not wanting to create problems with the brother-in-law who was helping so much with the business. Her silence, God forgive me, felt like a betrayal all its own dot. It was on a November afternoon, when the heat already announced summer, that things got much worse. I was home alone. My mama had taken Celine to town to buy fabric, and the men were all at the store. I was hanging clothes on the line when I heard his voice behind me. "Getting prettier every day, Uncle's niece," he said with a different voice he only used when we were alone. What happened next, my dears, are things an 11-year-old girl shouldn't know. Things that hurt the soul more than the body. Things that even today, at 72 years old, make my hands tremble to remember. The smell of his sweat, the roughness of his hands, the weight of him pressing me into the damp grass behind the laundry line. That day, I started dying a little inside. And it wasn't the last time. Uncle Christopher always found a way, always an excuse. "I'm going to get a tool island. I forgot some important papers. I came to see if your mama can set aside some chickens for Sunday." And always, always, he found a moment to corner me somewhere no one would see, no one would hear. I didn't quite understand what was happening. I knew it was wrong, that it was dirty, that it hurt, but I didn't know how to make it stop. Who would believe me against the word of the respected uncle, the partner who was bringing prosperity to the family? My father, who saw his brother as a hero. My mama, who could barely look her husband in the eyes when she needed to ask for something, so I kept quiet. I hid when I could, cried in secret, and prayed every night for it to end. But it didn't end on, and 2 months later, when my body started to change, when the hunger increased and my stomach churned in the morning, when the bleeding that came every month since I was 10 suddenly stopped, I knew something even worse was coming. I didn't really know what was happening with my body, but my mama soon noticed. One morning, while I was vomiting, hidden behind the chicken coop, she found me. She wiped my mouth with her apron, looked at me with those eyes that knew more than they said, and held my face between her hands. "My child, your body is different. Are you carrying a baby?" Her voice trembled, but there was no anger there. Just an immense, soul-crushing fear. I broke down in tears in her arms. I couldn't say who, how, when. I just cried like a lost child, which is what I truly was. My mama hugged me tight, as if she could protect me from the whole world with those thin arms. "Your father will be home soon. We're going to have to tell him," she said with a voice that already announced the storm. That afternoon, sitting at the kitchen table, trembling like a leaf in the wind, I waited for my father to arrive. My mama had sent Celine to play at the neighbors and asked Joshua to stay longer at the store. She wanted it to be just the three of us for this conversation. When my father came in, he could already feel something was wrong. My mama never waited for him sitting down. She was always standing, finishing putting food on the table. "What happened? Did someone die?" he asked, taking off his hat and hanging it on the door dot. My mama looked at me, giving me strength to speak, but the words got stuck in my throat. It was she who started. "Ernest, the girl is expecting." My father frowned, not understanding. "Expecting what?" "A baby man. Our daughter is pregnant." The silence that followed was the heaviest I've ever felt in my life. My father stood still, his hand still on the doorknob, as if deciding whether to come all the way in or run out. Then, slowly, he came to the table. He pulled out the chair and sat in front of me. His eyes didn't meet mine. Who is the bastard? I trembled from head to toe. How could I tell? How could I say it was his own brother, the partner, the man who was bringing prosperity to the family? Speak, girl. He pounded the table, making me jump. It was... The words wouldn't come out. Must be one of those schoolboys, or Jeremir's son who's always hanging around here. I'll kill that bastard. And then, before I could think, my mama spoke. It wasn't any boy, Ernest. I think it was your brother. The world stopped. My father turned to my mama with wide eyes, then to me. I saw his face go, from pale to red in seconds. Say that again. My mama, who never confronted my father, who always bowed her head, found strength from somewhere and repeated, I've seen Christopher coming here when you're not around. He keeps trying to be alone with the girl. Just the other day, I came back early from Nettie's house and saw him leaving the backyard in a hurry. Gertrude was there crying with her clothes all wrinkled. My father got up so fast he knocked over the chair. He came to me and grabbed me by the arm, shaking me. Is this true? My own brother? You let him? You let him? I could only cry with no strength to defend myself. He forced me, Dad. He hurt me. I tried to scream, but he covered my mouth. Said he'd kill me if I told anyone. My father let go of me as if I burned him. He took 2 steps back with an expression I'll never forget. It wasn't pain. It wasn't anger. It was disgust. Disgust for me. You're making this up to protect some boyfriend. My brother wouldn't do such a lowly thing. Ernest, look at the girl. She's telling the truth. My mama tried to argue. Shut up, he yelled, and for the first time I saw my father raise his hand against my mama. She fell to the floor from the slap, her lips split. I ran to help her, but my father grabbed me by the arm. He dragged me out of the kitchen, down the hallway, to the door that led to the basement. It was a dark, damp place where we stored potatoes, onions, and other things that needed to stay cool. You're staying here until I decide what to do with you and that disgrace in your belly, he said, pushing me down the stairs. I fell on the wooden steps, feeling pain all over my body. I heard the door slam and the key turn in the lock dot in the dark. Only a sliver of light came through a crack in the wall. I stayed there, curled up, crying softly so as not to irritate. My father Moore, whom I could hear arguing with my mama upstairs. The hours dragged on. Through the sliver of light, I saw day turn to night. No one came to get me. I slept right there on the dirt floor, hugging my own body, trying to protect that life growing inside me, even without fully understanding what it meant. Asterisk, asterisk, I woke up to the sound of the basement door being unlocked. It was my mama, bringing a plate of food and a glass of water. Her face was swollen, her eye bruised. Eat quickly, she whispered, looking back constantly. Your father went to the store to confront Christopher. What now? What's going to happen to me? I asked, my voice choked. I don't know, my child. He's blind with rage. He said things. Horrible things? What things, Mama? She lowered her eyes. Didn't want to tell me, but I needed to know. He said he's going to fix this. That he'll remove this shame from inside you with his own hands if necessary. My blood ran cold. I had already heard stories of girls who got pregnant before marriage, how some families solved the problem. Usually the girls were sent away to distant relatives' houses or to convents. But the way my mama spoke, it seemed much worse. He can't do that, Mama. It's a baby. It's his grandchild. It's his brother's child, she corrected, with infinite sadness in her eyes. In your father's head, it's living proof of his own blood's betrayal. I finished eating quickly. My mama took the plate, gave me a kiss on the forehead, and whispered, "Be strong, my child. I'll try to calm him down when he gets back." But my father didn't calm down. When he returned from the store, I heard the shouting from upstairs. Him and my mama arguing, things breaking, then heavy footsteps coming down to the basement. The door opened violently. My father appeared, his shirt stained with blood, his eyes injected with a fury I had never seen before. "Your uncle denies everything," he said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Says you're a liar, that you must be trying to protect some lowlife. I'm telling the truth, Dad. I swear on the Bible." "Shut up," he roared, coming down another step. "You know what he told me? That you kept offering yourself to him, that you'd walk around the house half-dressed when he came over." "That's a lie, Dad. I never did that. He's my brother. My partner. Why would he lie?" "To protect himself, Dad. He hurt me, threatened me. Please believe me." My father advanced to where I was. For the first time in my life, I saw my own father as a real threat. I backed up to the wall with nowhere to run. "Tomorrow we're going to fix this," he said with a sudden calm that scared me more than the shouting. "I'm calling Mrs. Hattie." My heart froze. Mrs. Hattie was an old woman who lived on the outskirts of town. They said she helped girls in trouble. Everyone knew what that meant. My legs gave out and I slid to the floor. "No, Dad. Please, I can leave. I can go far away. Nobody will know. But don't do this, please. You'd rather carry your uncle's shame in your belly? Rather have everyone point on the street and say, 'There goes Ernest's daughter carrying her own uncle's bastard'? I can leave. Nobody will know. And where would you go? Who would want a dirty girl like you?" Those words cut me deeper than any knife. My own father saw me as something dirty, something disposable. "Tomorrow morning, I'll fix this," he said, turning his back. "And then you'll never talk about this again. We'll forget this happened." Asterisk, asterisk, the door closed. The key turned. I was in the dark again. But this time, a new feeling was growing inside me. It wasn't just fear. There was determination. There in that dark basement, with my hands on the belly that barely showed signs of a life inside it, I decided I wouldn't let my father do that. Somehow, I needed to escape. The days in the basement dragged on like an eternity. My father came down only to bring me a plate of food and some water once a day. The first few times I tried to talk, to beg, to make him listen to me, but he remained silent. His eyes fixed on some point above my head, as if looking at me was too painful. Sometimes when he left, my mama came secretly. She'd bring a thin blanket, an extra piece of bread, or simply sit with me for a few minutes, holding my hand in the dark. He moved up his trip to Memphis, she told me in a whisper on the third day of my captivity. He's going to pick up merchandise from the warehouse and stop to visit his friend Tucker. He'll only be back in 4 days. "And Mrs. Hattie?" I asked, fear squeezing my chest. "He talked to her yesterday. She's coming as soon as your father gets back." My time was running out. 4 days to find a way out, or that life inside me, and maybe my own, would be lost. On the 4th day of my captivity, I woke up to the sound of the basement door being unlocked. It was before dawn. Through the crack in the wall, the sky was still dark. I thought it was my mama, but to my surprise, it was Joshua. My brother had heard the fights, the screaming. He'd discovered where I was and what had happened, although no one had told him directly. In a small house like ours, secrets had short legs. "You need to get out of here," he said, looking nervously behind him. "Dad's coming back tomorrow." I got up, stumbling, my legs weak from being in that damp, cramped place for so long. Joshua helped me up the basement steps. We crossed the dark kitchen in silence. My mama was there, wrapping something in a dish towel. "Some bread and cheese," she said, handing me the package. Then she took a folded envelope from her apron pocket. "It's the money I saved from selling pies." It's not much, but it'll help until you find a place. Where am I going, Mama? I asked, my voice choked with fear and sadness. To Knoxville, Joshua answered. There's a cousin of Mama's there, Mrs. Beatrice. She doesn't know anything, but Mama sent a letter saying you're going to help with housework. She'll receive you for a while. I looked at my Mama, who had tears in her eyes. But what about after? When the belly grows, when the baby is born? One thing at a time, child. First, you need to get out of here. Away from your father. Away from your uncle. She swallowed hard. Later, we'll think about the rest. Maybe your father will calm down with time. I knew it was an empty hope. My father would never accept, never forgive. To him, I had stained the family name, brought shame into the house, and Celine. I asked, thinking of my baby sister. She understands when she's older. My Mama replied, tears finally streaming down her face. We need to go. Joshua interrupted, anxious. Jean is waiting with the truck at the end of the street. Jean was my brother's friend, a few years older. He worked hauling goods between towns in the region. According to Joshua, he had agreed to take me to the train station in Crossville, where I would catch the train to Knoxville. My Mama hugged me tight, as if wanting to keep the feeling of my body next to hers. Go with God, my child. Take care of yourself. And take care of this baby. Don't let anyone hurt you again. We couldn't say anything more. The lump in our throats prevented words. Joshua pulled me by the hand, and we left through the back door. The cold morning air gave me goosebumps. I wore only a simple dress and a wool cardigan, the same clothes I was wearing when I was locked in the basement. On my feet, leather sandals already worn from use. Joshua guided me through the backs of houses, avoiding the main streets where someone might see us. When we reached the road leaving town, we saw Jean's truck waiting as arranged. He waved, nervous. Get in the back and stay hidden under the tarp, Jean said, not even really looking at me. If anyone stops us, don't make a sound. Joshua helped me climb up and covered me with the tarp. Under it, among the grain sacks, I could barely breathe. The smell of dust and sweat permeated everything. The truck started moving. Each bump was pain in my body, already bruised from days in the basement. I'll try to convince Dad, Joshua said, his voice almost lost in the noise of the wheels. When things calmed down, maybe. But his voice had no conviction. We both knew I was leaving that house forever. The trip to the station was slow and painful. When we finally arrived, the sky was beginning to lighten. Joshua helped me down from the truck and took me to a corner away from the small station. The train comes in an hour, he said, handing me a small bundle. Here's your ticket and some money Jean and I put together. Thank you, Joshua, I managed to say, my voice weak with emotion. My brother looked around, nervous. I need to get back before Dad wakes up and realizes I took the basement key. You going to be okay? I nodded, even though I wasn't sure. He hugged me quickly and ran back to the truck where Jean waited impatiently. There, alone at the almost deserted station with only an improvised bundle and a heavy heart, I waited for the train that would take me far from everything I knew. The train arrived on time, releasing steam and noise. I climbed on with trembling legs, found an empty seat, and sat down. As the train started moving, I looked out the window. Crossville, the town where I was born and raised, was being left behind. A part of me was dying there, along with my stolen childhood. The trip was long. I had to change trains in Chattanooga, waiting hours for the connection to Knoxville. People looked at me with curiosity. A girl alone in simple clothes, traveling without adult company. I kept my head down, avoiding looks, answers, questions. I arrived in Knoxville already at night. The station was busier than Crossville's, with people rushing back and forth. I stood still, lost, not knowing where to go. In the letter my mama sent, she had given cousin Beatrice's address. but I had no idea how to get there. A man in uniform approached. He was a station employee. "You lost, girl?" I showed him the address scribbled on the paper. He frowned. "That's on the other side of town. Too far to walk, especially at night." My eyes filled with tears. He must have taken pity because he called a boy who was nearby. "Oscar, take this girl to Magnolia Street. It's far, but I'll give you a tip." The boy, who couldn't have been more than 16, agreed. He had an old bicycle with a rack on the back. "Sit here and hold on tight," he said, pointing to the rack. "That's how," clinging to a stranger's waist. I arrived at Mrs. Beatrice's house. It was a simple construction, similar to my family's, but with a well-kept garden in front full of flowers. I knocked on the door with my heart in my mouth. What if she wasn't there? What if she didn't accept me? The door opened, revealing a lady with gray hair pulled into a tight bun. She looked at me with suspicion. "Who are you?" "I'm Gertrude, Dorothy's daughter. Did you get her letter?" Her face softened a bit. "I did, but I wasn't expecting you so soon." She looked at the boy on the bicycle who was waiting. A few steps away. "You can go, son. The girl's safe now." Asterisk, he waved and left, pedaling into the darkness. Mrs. Beatrice opened the door wider, allowing me to enter. The house was small but cozy. In the living room, a worn sofa, a small table with a crocheted doily, and on the wall, the same saints that decorated my family's house. "Your mama said you were coming to help with housework, that you needed a change of scenery." I just nodded, not knowing what to say. She studied me for a moment, her eyes going down to my belly, which still showed no signs of the life inside it. "You hungry? Got soup on the stove." I nodded yes, suddenly aware of the hunger that had been with me for days. She led me to the kitchen, served me a bowl of chicken and dumpling soup, and sat across from me, watching as I ate. "Your mama didn't tell me the truth, did she?" she asked suddenly. I froze with the spoon halfway to my mouth. "What do?" "You mean I wasn't born yesterday, girl. A mother doesn't send her 11-year-old daughter away just to help with housework." I lowered my eyes, unable to face her. I put the spoon back in the bowl. "You don't need to tell me now," she said more gently. "Eat your soup, then I'll show you where you'll sleep." And so that's how I started my new life in Knoxville, in the house of a distant relative who barely knew me, carrying in my womb a secret that I didn't yet know would change my life forever. The days at Mrs. Beatrice's house turned into weeks. At first, she treated me with distant kindness. I helped with cleaning, washed clothes, peeled vegetables for lunch. I slept in a small room at the back of the house, small but clean, with a window overlooking a pecan tree. At night, lying in the narrow bed, I'd hug my belly that was beginning to show the first signs of the life growing there. Mrs. Beatrice didn't ask questions, but I noticed her eyes following me, noticing the changes in my body, the morning sickness, the clothes getting tighter. One afternoon, while I was hanging sheets on the backyard clothesline, she appeared with a dress in her hands. "This was my daughter's when she was expecting Tony," she said, handing me the piece. "It'll be more comfortable than those of yours." I accepted the dress with tears in my eyes. It was the first time someone openly acknowledged my condition and did so not with judgment, but with compassion. "Thank you, Mrs. Beatrice." She nodded and with a sigh asked what I knew she would ask one day. "How many months?" "Almost 4, I replied quietly. "And the father?" I lowered my eyes, unable to answer. She didn't insist. She just put her hand on my shoulder and said, "When you're ready to talk, I'll listen." Asterisk 2 weeks later, what I feared most happened. It was Sunday and we were coming back from church. Mrs. Beatrice liked to go early when there were fewer people. We were walking down Main Street when I saw a face that made my blood freeze. It was my father. He was talking with some man in front of a store. He didn't see me immediately, and I pulled Mrs. Beatrice into a side street. Asterisk. What's wrong, child? You look like you've seen a ghost. My father, I whispered, trembling. There, in front of Mr. Henderson's store. Mrs. Beatrice peeked around the corner, then pulled me into an alley between two houses. That man in the dark hat, the one talking to Henderson? I nodded, my heart beating so hard I thought I'd faint. Let's go around the back of the houses, she decided, guiding me down a path I didn't know. Are you sure it's him? I am Mrs. Beatrice, and if he sees me, I couldn't finish the sentence. When we got home, I was in a panic. I ran to my little room, gathered the few clothes I had into a bundle. What are you doing? Mrs. Beatrice asked from the door. I need to leave. If my father finds me here, he'll take me back or worse. She came in, closed the door behind her, and sat on the edge of the bed. I think it's time you told me what's really going on. And then, for the first time, I told everything. My uncle's abuse, discovering the pregnancy, my father's reaction, the days in the basement, the desperate escape. I spoke without stopping, the words coming out like a flood finally breaking through a dam. When I finished, I was exhausted. Tears drying on my face, Mrs. Beatrice was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the wall as if seeing beyond it. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, Your mama knew you were pregnant when she sent you here. She knew, and still she didn't tell me the truth. She shook her head but didn't seem angry. I understand her fear, but this complicates things. Are you going to send me away? I asked, fear squeezing my chest again. No, child. But I can't keep you here. Not with your father in town. Knoxville isn't that big. Soon someone will comment about Dorothy's cousin who's raising a pregnant girl. Where will I go then? I have a friend, Sister Constance. She works at St. Mary's Home in Hartsville. It's a place for girls in difficult situations, an orphanage. I asked, fear growing. No. It's a home run by nuns. They help girls who need a safe place to have their babies. Nobody asks questions there. Nobody judges. I pondered the idea going to another unknown place, starting over. But what else could I do? Won't my father look for me there? He has no way of knowing you went there. And even if he finds out, the nuns wouldn't let him take you. The Mother Superior isn't afraid of the bishop, much less an ordinary man. That same night, Mrs. Beatrice wrote a letter to Sister Constance. The next day, very early, she took me to the station. She bought my ticket to Hartsville and gave me a bundle with food for the trip. When you get there, look for St. Mary's Home. Show this letter to Sister Constance. She'll take care of you. I hugged Mrs. Beatrice with all my strength. She had welcomed me without asking questions, and now she was helping me once more. Thank you for everything, Mrs. Beatrice. Go with God, my child, and take care of that little angel growing in there. The trip to Hartsville was calmer than the first. I was no longer that terrified girl fleeing in the middle of the night. I still had fear, still carried the pain of what had happened, but I also carried a new strength, the determination to protect that life growing inside me. When I arrived in Hartsville, I asked a man sweeping the station sidewalk where St. Mary's home was. It's on the edge of town, near the river, he explained. About 2 miles from here. If you follow this straight to the end, then turn right at Quinn's Store Crossroads, you'll see the white walls. I thanked him and started walking. The day was hot, a strong sun, making me sweat inside the loose dress Mrs. Beatrice had given me. When I finally spotted the white walls of the home, my legs were already trembling with exhaustion. The home was an old construction with a large iron gate in front. I pulled the bell cord and waited. Minutes later, a young nun opened a small window in the gate. How can I help you? She asked, looking at me with curiosity. I'm looking for Sister Constance, Mrs. Beatrice from Knoxville sent me. She opened the gate, inviting me to enter. The inner courtyard was spacious with a well-kept garden and some girls sitting on stone benches talking or sewing. "Wait here," the young nun said, pointing to a bench under a tree. I sat down, observing the place that could be my new home. The girls glanced at me sideways, curious about the newcomer. Some looked very young, others already in late adolescence. Several had pronounced bellies in different stages of pregnancy. Minutes later, the young nun returned, accompanied by an older lady with round glasses and a stern but not unkind air. "You must be Gertrude," she said, sitting next to me on the bench. "I'm Sister Constance. Mrs. Beatrice sent a telegram warning me you'd be coming." I handed her the letter Mrs. Beatrice had written. Sister Constance read in silence, her lips pressed together. "I understand," she said finally, carefully folding the letter. "You can stay with us, child. This is a place of refuge for girls who need protection." I can't pay," I said, remembering that the money my mama and Joshua had given me was almost gone. The home lives on donations and the work of the residents themselves. Each one contributes as she can in the kitchen, laundry, garden, sewing workshop. You'll receive a roof, food, medical care, and when the time comes, help to have your baby safely. And after? I asked the question that hadn't left me since I discovered the pregnancy. What happens after the baby is born? Sister Constance adjusted her glasses on her face, studying me for a moment before answering. "That depends on you, Gertrude. Some girls leave their babies for adoption. We have good families who welcome these children. Others decide to keep their children, and we help them restart their lives outside here with a job, a place to live. The choice will be yours." The idea of giving my baby to strangers made my heart tighten. Despite everything, my age, the horrible circumstances of conception, that child was mine. It was the only family I had left now. "I want to keep my son," I said with a certainty that surprised me. Sister Constance nodded, as if she already expected that answer. "Then let's prepare for that. But first you need to rest. You look exhausted." She called the young nun who had received me. "Sister Angela, take our new resident to the newcomer's dormitory. Then show her where she can bathe and change clothes." And so that's how I entered St. Mary's home, the place that would be my refuge for the next months, where I would learn new skills, make unlikely friends, and where finally my son would be born far from violence and hatred in an environment of peace and acceptance. Yet, the months at St. Mary's home passed like the seasons, each bringing its own joys and difficulties. My belly grew, and with it, my determination. At the home, I found more than a refuge. I found a temporary home and people who became like family. There were 15 other girls when I arrived. Some older, others even younger than me, each with her story, her pain, her secret. We never asked each other for details. It was an unwritten rule among us. But at night in the dormitories, we shared our fears about childbirth, our hopes for the future, our dreams for our unborn children. The nuns were strict but fair. The routine started early. At 5 a.m, the bell rang for prayers, then simple coffee in the refectory, and then each to her assigned task. Some worked in the garden, others in the kitchen, laundry, cleaning. I was assigned to the sewing workshop, perhaps because Sister Constance noticed my nimble hands, or perhaps because with my growing belly, heavier work was difficult. In the workshop, I learned much more than sewing. I learned to make delicate mending, to embroider initials on sheets, to transform scraps into beautiful quilts. Sister Dorothy, who coordinated the workshop, was a demanding but patient master. "Sewing is like life, Gertrude," she'd say, watching my uneven stitches. "You need to have patience, attention to detail, and know that each stitch matters. to the final design. While my hands learned the art of sewing, my heart learned the art of acceptance. At first, I carried a lot of anger at my uncle for what he'd done, at my father for not believing me, even at God for allowing all that. The nuns never tried to convince me to forgive. They just listened when I needed to talk and respected. My silence when words failed that it was in the 7th month of pregnancy that I received the first letter. It was from Joshua, my brother. The letter had gone a long way first to Mrs. Beatrice in Knoxville, who then forwarded it to the home. I opened it with trembling hands. "Dear sister," he wrote in irregular handwriting. *, I hope this finds you well. Things have changed a lot here. Dad found out you had run away the same day. He went crazy. Went to Knoxville after you, but you had already left. When he came back, his anger turned against Uncle Christopher. There was a terrible fight at the store. Uncle denied everything, called Dad crazy. In the end, their partnership ended. Uncle Christopher went back to Memphis and Dad kept the store. But business is bad, Mama is sad. Selene asks about you always. I managed to get your whereabouts from Mrs. Beatrice. Write to me when you can. ***, your brother. Joshua. ***, I cried a lot after reading that letter. It was as if a piece of my past had reached me, reminding me that despite everything, I still had a family. I replied the same day, saying I was fine, that the baby would be born soon, that I had learned to sew. I didn't mention my plans for after the birth. I didn't even know for sure what I would do. 2 weeks later, when I was already in my 8th month, I received another letter. This time it was from my mama. The writing was hesitant, as if each word had cost enormous effort. *, My child, she wrote, *, I ask forgiveness for not protecting you as I should have. Your father has changed a lot since you left. The truth came out. Your uncle confessed everything before leaving for Memphis. It wasn't out of remorse. It was out of revenge against your father, who expelled him from the business. Your father is destroyed, drinks every day, can barely work. He cries your name sometimes when he thinks no one is listening. I don't know if you two can ever reconcile. I only know that I love you and I pray for your well-being and the well-being of this child. If you ever want to come back, there will always be a place for you here. ***, with love, your mama. ***, that letter moved me deeply. My uncle's confession meant my father now knew the truth. That I hadn't lied, that I hadn't offered myself to anyone, that I had been a victim in my own house. Part of me felt immense relief, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. But another part felt renewed anger. ***, why did my uncle have to confess for my father to believe? Why wasn't my word enough? ***, I shared my anguish with Sister Constance during one of our weekly conversations. The pride of men is a terrible thing, Gertrude, she said, sighing. Your father preferred to believe a convenient lie than face a painful truth. Now he's paying the price for it. Do you think I should forgive him? I asked, confused. It's not for me to say what you should do. Forgiveness isn't something given out of obligation. It's a gift both for those who forgive and those who are forgiven. But it takes time, and only you will know when and if you're ready. That conversation stayed with me for days. I thought about it while I sewed, while I ate, while I felt my baby moving inside me. I was immersed in these thoughts when the first contractions began. The birth was long and difficult. As expected for a 12-year-old girl, 16 hours of pain and fear, holding Sister Angela's hand, who didn't leave my side for a minute. When I finally heard my son's cry a boy, healthy and strong, all the pain seemed worth it. Matthew, I whispered when they placed him in my arms. His name will be Matthew. A beautiful name, said Sister Constance, who had come as soon as she heard about the birth. It means gift from God, and that's what he was to me. Not a reminder of violence, but a gift, a new chance, a new beginning. Looking at that red, wrinkled little face, I made a silent promise. He would never know the circumstances of his conception. He would never carry the weight of the hatred I had felt. He would grow up knowing only that he was loved, deeply loved. The following months were about adapting to motherhood. The nuns helped me, teaching me how to breastfeed, how to bathe, how to soothe nighttime crying. Other girls who had already had their babies also shared their experiences. It was a small community of child mothers, all learning together. But I knew I couldn't stay at the home forever. When Matthew turned 6 months old, Sister Constance called me for a serious conversation. "It's time to think about the next step, Gertrude," she said. "What do you plan to do?" I had already thought a lot about this. "I don't want to go back to Crossville," I said firmly. "Not yet. Maybe someday, when Matthew is older, when I'm stronger. But now I want to build a new life for the two of us." "I understand," she nodded. "And do you have any idea where you'd like to go?" "I'd like to stay here in Hartsville if possible. I've already gotten used to the town, know some people. And I learned to sew. Well, maybe I can get work at the seamstress on the town square. Mrs. Nancy, she mentioned she needed help when she came to bring donations to the home." Sister Constance smiled. "I had already thought of that too. I spoke with Mrs. Nancy last week. She is willing to give you a chance. And we have a small house not far from here that belongs to the home. It's modest but clean and safe. You could live there with Matthew, paying symbolic rent until you get established." I couldn't hold back the tears. It was more than I expected, more than I thought I deserved. "Why are you helping me so much?" I asked between sobs, "Because I see in you a strength that perhaps you yourself can't see yet," she replied, holding my hands in hers. "You went through something terrible, Gertrude. Something that could have destroyed many people. But you're here, caring for your son with love, planning a future. That's courage, and courage deserves to be rewarded." The following week, I moved to the little house on Acacia Street. It was a wooden cottage with 2 bedrooms, a living room, kitchen, and a little backyard. The furniture was simple, some donated by the home, others by the community, but it was our home. The first real home Matthew would know, and the first place I could call my own since leaving Crossville. I started working with Mrs. Nancy 3 days later. I took Matthew with me. She had arranged a little crib at the back of the shop where he could stay while I worked. My nimble fingers and what I had learned at the home impressed the old seamstress, who soon began to trust me with more complex work. "You have talent, girl," she'd say, watching my precise stitches. "One day you'll have your own shop. You'll see." I would smile, grateful for the compliment, but also for the confidence she placed in me. Someone believed I had a future, and that meant more than she could imagine. And so that's how we started our new life, Matthew and I. One day at a time, one stitch at a time, sewing not just fabrics, but also a new destiny free from the shadows of the past. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I looked at it with hope. It's funny how time passes, isn't it? It seems like yesterday I arrived in Hartsville with little Matthew in my arms, not really knowing what the future held for us, and almost 60 years have passed. My little baby today is a 61-year-old man with gray hair and wrinkles on his face, just like his father when he smiles. A resemblance only I notice and keep to myself in silence. Life was generous to us here in Hartsville. After 5 years working with Mrs. Nancy, I managed to save some money and open my own sewing shop. It was small, just 1 room on Maple Street. I started doing repairs, hemming pants, alterations on dresses, but soon business grew. The town's young ladies started coming to me for party dresses, and then came the wedding dresses. Hands of gold, they called me. They said I didn't Just sew fabrics, but Dreams. Matthew grew up there among scraps and threads, learning to respect work and effort. He was a curious, intelligent boy. The nuns from the home helped us a lot. They got him a scholarship to study at St. Francis School. That's where he discovered his love for numbers, for mathematics. When he turned 18, he got a spot at the university in Nashville to study accounting. It was hard to see him leave, but I knew it was best for him. "Mama, you won't be alone," he promised me before going. "I'll come back every weekend." And he kept his promise for a good while until he met Claire, a girl from Nashville, daughter of shop owners. They got married when he was 23. I insisted on sewing her wedding dress, the most beautiful I've ever made. They settled in Nashville, where Matthew opened his own accounting office. The grandchildren came, first Edward, then Lucy, and later the great-grandchildren, little Helen and Gabriel, who are this old grandma's joy. I stayed in Hartsville. With my workshop that gradually grew, I hired helpers, gave other girls opportunities to learn the craft, as Mrs. Nancy and the nuns had done for me. Some of them came from St. Mary's Home itself, which continued its work of refuge for many decades until it closed its doors in the 90s when the Mother Superior passed away. I never married. There were suitors, of course. Mr. Jerome from the pharmacy, a widower, courted me for almost 2 years. He was a good man, respected in town. And Dr. Thomas, a doctor who came from Memphis, also showed interest. But something in me could never fully trust any man after what I went through. I preferred to dedicate my life to my son, to my work, and later to my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Today, at 72 years old, I live a peaceful life. I closed the workshop 5 years ago when my eyes no longer saw the small stitches, and my hands began to feel the weight of arthritis. But I still sew for myself and for the family's children. My house on Magnolia Street, I bought this bigger lot in the 80s after the little house on Acacia Street got too small. Has a special room just for that, with my old sewing machine and shelves full of colorful fabrics. Every morning I wake up with the sun. I make my coffee, water my plants, and sit on the porch to watch the day begin. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I go to the senior group at church. We learn crafts, do light exercise, and mainly we talk. They're dear friends I've made over the years. None of them know my whole story. Some parts are too heavy to share. But they all know I raised Matthew alone, and they respect me for it. On Sundays, it's time to make sweet potato pie with pecans, my mama's recipe, which I kept in. Memory. The sweet smell fills the house and brings memories of childhood, the good memories, before everything changed. I always save some for when Matthew and the family come to visit, usually once a month. It's a joy to see the house full here. The grandchildren's stories, the great-grandchildren's mischief. I kept in touch with my family from Crossville for many years through letters. My mama wrote every week at first, then spaced it out to once a month, telling news, sending photos of Celine growing up. Joshua also wrote from time to time about my father. The news came filtered. I know he never fully recovered from what happened. The store closed. He had to work as an employee in other shops. He started drinking heavily. His health declined. When Matthew was 10 years old, I received news that my father had died a heart attack after years of alcoholism. I felt a mixture of emotions I can't even quite explain. Part of me felt relief. Another felt deep sadness for what could have been and wasn't. I went to the funeral, taking Matthew with me. It was the first time I'd returned to Crossville since I ran away. Nobody asked questions about who my son's father was. Everyone seemed to know, or at least suspect, the truth. My mama passed away 5 years later from pneumonia. Joshua married, had 3 children, and stayed in Crossville. Celine moved to Atlanta when she got married. We gradually lost touch. As for my Uncle Christopher, I never heard from him again after he went back to Memphis. And to be honest, I prefer it that way. Today, looking back, I see a life that wasn't easy, that was full. I transformed pain into strength, fear into courage. I raised a good, honest, hardworking son. I saw my grandchildren grow up, and now I see my great-grandchildren flourish. What more could an old woman like me want? My dears, if there's one thing I've learned in this long life, it's that nobody has the right to take our dignity. Not family, not husband, not boss, not anyone. What I went through at 11 years old was a terrible injustice. An uncle who betrayed the family's trust, a father who didn't believe his own daughter. But I didn't let that define who I am. No, sometimes I think about what would have happened if I hadn't escaped from that basement. If I had accepted the fate my father wanted to impose on me, I wouldn't have my Matthew. Wouldn't have my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren. I wouldn't have met the nuns who welcomed me, Mrs. Beatrice who helped me, Mrs. Nancy who gave me a chance. I wouldn't be the seamstress Gertrude that the town of Hartsville knew for so many years. When abuse happens at home, it's like a storm that destroys everything. You feel alone, abandoned, without a way out. But I tell you, there's always a way out. There's always someone willing to extend a hand. Even when it seems the whole world has turned its back. It was like that for me. My mama risked everything to help me escape. My brother faced fear to give me a chance to get away. And then other people appeared in my path, angels disguised as ordinary people. Life isn't just what happens to us, but what we do with what happens. I could have drowned in bitterness and hatred. I could have given up when I saw that, at 11 years old, I would have to raise a child alone. But I chose to move forward. I chose to transform each stitch I made in the fabric into an affirmation that I was capable, that I deserved good things. If you're going through something difficult now, if you feel there's no hope, listen to what this 72-year-old grandma has to say. You're stronger than you imagine. Life can bend you, but it doesn't have to break you. And after the storm, believe me, comes the calm. In any country, in any culture. Respect for human rights, especially children's, must be sacred. If you know someone in an abusive situation, don't stay silent. Seek help from local authorities, from protection organizations. Be part of the solution, because nobody deserves to carry the weight of violence alone. I sewed my life scrap by scrap, stitch by stitch, with patience and faith. It wasn't perfect. It has patches, has crooked lines, has stains that won't come out. But it's a beautiful, colorful quilt that keeps me warm on cold nights and makes me proud to look at. And you, my dears who watched me until here, thank you for listening to this grandma's story. Hit that like button and subscribe to Grandparents' Tales because it helps bring these stories to more people. And many people need to hear that even after the greatest pains, life can indeed flourish again. And don't forget comment down below where you're watching from, so I know who stayed with me until the end of this story. Do it now. Don't wait another minute. Because just as I found courage to start over, you too can be the strength someone needs to take the first step toward liberation. God bless you, my dears. And always remember, no matter how dark the night, the sun always rises again.